You have said something in a room and had it simply not happen. It was not rejected. It was not argued with. It was not really even heard. You spoke and the conversation went on over the top of it as if the air had absorbed the sentence before it reached anyone. And then, 5 minutes later, somebody else said almost exactly the same thing and the room stopped. And somebody said, "That is a great point." You did not feel angry in that moment. You felt something worse, colder, harder to name. You realize the problem is not that people disagree with you. It is that your word does not weigh anything, and you went home turning over the only solution that seems to exist. Speak louder, take up more space, cut in before you get cut off. Over the next hour, I am going to show you why that is the wrong exit. And I am going to show it to you with arithmetic, not with an opinion. I am going to show you 3 things. The first is why raising your voice works for 4 seconds and charges you for 4 years. There is a mechanism here, and it is almost physical. Once you see the mechanism, you will stop doing something you do every single day without noticing. Something that is costing you the exact thing you want most. The second is the real difference between being feared, being liked, and being respected. Homi had 3 separate words for those 3 things, and we crushed them all into one, which is why most people spend their whole lives chasing the wrong one and never find out. There is a 1-sentence test that separates them, and it works in any room with any person. And the third is 9 habits. 9. All of them quiet, all of them small, all of them possible to start today, and not one of them involves telling anyone anything about you. None of them is a technique for impressing people. None of them depends on another person changing their behavior. They are 9 things you do in the dark that show up on their own in the light. No shouting. No shouting. No fighting for the room. Now, before we really start, I am going to ask you for 2 quick things, and then I will not bring them up again. The first, if at any point in this video you feel like somebody finally put words to something you have been carrying for years and could never explain, leave a like. I know that sounds small, but a like is the only signal the algorithm understands, and it decides whether this video reaches the person who is going to lie awake tonight replaying a meeting where they were talked over and nobody noticed. You press one button. Someone you will never meet understands their own life a little better. The second, subscribe. There is no shouting here, no promise of a perfect life, no 30-day formula for success. There is ancient philosophy used as a tool in long videos, made to be listened to slowly, in headphones, in the car, late at night. If that is what you came for, the button is right there. And if you know someone who works hard, delivers constantly, and is still the last person consulted when the decision actually matters, send them this video. There are things we cannot say to a friend while looking at his face, but we can send them. That is it. The asking is over. Now, turn the lights down and let us get to it. I want to start with a scene, and I want you to notice that it has a very specific shape, because there is an enormous difference between being attacked and being talked through. Being attacked hurts, but being attacked is a form of recognition. Whoever attacks you had to look at you. Whoever attacks you spent energy on you. Whoever attacks you has, at bottom, admitted that you exist enough to be a problem. Being talked through is something else. Being talked through is speaking and having the sentence make no volume at all. It is making a suggestion and nobody is saying yes or no. It is being interrupted and the interruption not being noticed by anyone, including the person who did it. It is being in a group and realizing that when you start talking, people keep looking at their phones, and when someone else starts talking, they lift their heads. It is having to ask for the check twice. It is repeating your own name during an introduction. It is posting in the team chat and getting nothing, and the next message from someone else getting 4 replies. It is being the person everyone describes as great to work with, while nobody can name a single decision that was made because of you. And this pain is harder to describe than the pain of being humiliated, because it has no scene. It has no sentence. If you try to explain it to somebody, you will sound needy. You will say, I talk and nobody listens. And they will say, oh, come on, everybody loves you. And they will be telling the truth. Everybody does love you. That is exactly the problem, and we are going to get to it. Now look at what you did with that, because you did do something. Nobody spends years being talked through without developing a response, and the possible responses are basically three, and all three fail, and all three fail for the same reason. The first response is volume. You talk louder. You talk faster, so you do not get cut off in the middle. You start walking into other people's sentences, because you learn that if you wait for the period, the gap never opens. You repeat the same idea 3 times in different words because nobody reacted the first time. You start using that tone that is not quite a shout, but everybody knows is a warning. And it works. It is important to say that, because if it did not work, nobody would do it. Raise your voice at a table and the table stops. Every eye comes to you. You got it. You got 4 seconds. And now I am going to show you the arithmetic, and it is the single most important thing in the first half hour of this video. When you raise your voice in order to be heard, you are not just making noise. You are making a public declaration, and the entire room receives that declaration, even though nobody could put into words what they just received. The declaration is, what I am about to say, on its own, is not enough to make you stop. You have just announced, in front of everybody, that your word requires a subsidy, that it does not stand up by itself, that it needs a push from outside, and that the push is volume. And here is the cruel part. The room learns it, not consciously. Nobody walks out of a meeting thinking he has to shout because his content is weak, but the association forms, and it forms fast, and it lasts. From the 3rd time on, when you start raising your tone, what happens in people's heads is not attention. It is the expectation of noise. They are not listening to you. They are waiting for you to finish. So you raise it more, because volume has a property nobody warns you about. It builds tolerance, like a drug. The dose that stopped the room last month does not stop it anymore. You need more, and more. And the ceiling of that is always the same place, the day you blow up over something small in front of people who matter, and walk out of that room knowing you just lost something that is not coming back soon. 4 seconds at a time, build over 4 years. The second wrong response is gentler, which makes it far harder to see. It is buying your place with usefulness. If I cannot carry weight through what I say, I will carry weight through what I do for other people. I take that task nobody wants. I stay late. I fix somebody else's problem on a Saturday. I am the one who never makes anything difficult, who always says yes, who is always available. And here, the result is almost funny in how precise it is. You become well-liked, genuinely well-liked. You get invited to everything. People speak well of you. They remember your birthday, and they never ask you anything. Because availability and authority are different currencies, and paying in one does not get you paid in the other. The person who is always available teaches everyone, silently, that his time is cheap. And the man whose time is cheap has a cheap opinion, because both come out of the same reading the room is making of him. There is a version of this response that is even more common, and you probably do it: agreeing too fast. You agree before you have finished listening to show that you are easy to work with. You say, makes sense, makes sense, makes sense. And after 6 months of that, on the day you say, makes sense, and actually mean it, it is worth nothing because you already spent the word. Agreement with no cost carries no information. If your yes is automatic, your yes is noise. And if your yes is noise, your opinion does not get consulted because nobody consults a mirror. And then there is the third wrong response, which is the most modern and the most heavily sold right now. It is technique. You have seen it. You probably saw it this week. Speak slowly on purpose. Never break eye contact first. Leave 3 seconds of silence before you answer to create tension. Take up space with your body. Never show enthusiasm, because enthusiasm gives away power. Build your aura. I want to be fair here, because there is something true mixed into that. Speaking more slowly is better. Pausing before you answer is better. That is going to show up in this video. It is literally the first of the 9 habits. But there is one difference that decides everything, and it is not subtle. The habit is a pause that exists because you are thinking. The technique is a pause that exists because you are being seen thinking. And people can hear the difference. Everybody hears it, not with reasoning, with instinct. The man who learned to pause as a technique pauses in a way that is audibly empty, because when he comes back, he does not come back with anything better than what he would have said immediately. He just comes back later, and then you have the most uncomfortable thing that can exist in a room, a man performing unshakable. Marcus Aurelius wrote a line in Book 10 of the Meditations that settles this in one stroke, and he was talking to himself, not to you. He wrote, "Stop arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." He was emperor of Rome. He could have had anyone who disrespected him killed. And he was sitting alone with a notebook on campaign, reminding himself to stop performing the thing and simply be the thing. The 3 wrong responses, volume, usefulness, and technique, fail for the same reason. They are all operations run from the outside. All 3 try to produce an effect inside other people's heads, directly, right now. That is the structural error, and this is where we get to the image that organizes this entire video. I want you to picture 2 things. The first is an empty crystal glass. You touch it with 1 finger and it sings. A high, loud note that crosses the whole room and keeps going long after the touch. Everybody hears it. Nobody can ignore it. The second is a block of granite. You touch it with 1 finger and absolutely nothing happens. No sound, no vibration, nothing. Now the question. Which of the 2 is easier to move? Sound is not the strength of an object. Sound is what matter does when it is thin. What rings is what is hollow. What has mass does not need to make any noise at all, because its presence does not depend on being announced. It is discovered the moment somebody tries to move it. Rome had a word for that, and that word is the key to this video. Gravitas. And gravitas is not seriousness. It is not a scowl. It is not the guy who never laughs and speaks slowly to sound deep. Gravitas literally means weight, same root as gravity. A man with gravitas was a man with mass, in the physical sense of the word, a man who was not easily displaced, who did not change position depending on who walked into the room, who stayed where he was. And the opposite of gravitas in Rome was not cheerfulness. It was levitas, lightness, and not the good kind. Levitas was the quality of a man who gets carried, who goes wherever the wind happens to be going, who has one opinion in front of the boss and another one in the hallway, who says yes because yes was easier in that particular moment, who is volatile, inconsistent, and therefore cannot be used as a reference point by anyone. And notice the brutal asymmetry between the 2. Levitas is loud. A light object, when you strike it, makes a lot of noise and travels far. An empty can kicked down the street clatters past 3 houses. A stone in the same size, kicked with the same force, does not move, and the only sound in the whole event is your foot. Noise is not proof of force. Noise is proof that there is empty space inside. Hold on to this sentence, because it is going to come back 9 times in this video. Once per habit, a man who has to raise his voice is borrowing the weight he does not have. And now, I need to give you the second word, because it is the one that keeps this video from becoming the thing it must not become. The word respect. It comes from the Latin respicere, and respicere is made of 2 parts, re, again, and spicere, to look. Respect literally means to look again. Stop and sit with the size of that. Respect is not the impression you make. Impression is the first look, and the first look is cheap. It is clothing, posture, tone of voice, the technique somebody sells you in a 30-second clip. Anyone can buy the first look. Respect is what happens when a person has already seen you, already formed the impression, already filed you in a drawer, and something makes them come back and look again. And the consequence of that is the most important thing in this entire video. Nobody can give themselves the second look. It does not exist. There is no technique, no posture, no lining. The second look is always a movement made by someone else, inside their head, on their schedule. You have no access to that place. You never did. You never will. The only thing you control is being the kind of thing that makes a person come back. Which is why, how do I make them respect me, is a question with no answer. It is not a hard question. It is a badly formed one, in the same way that how do I get lucky is badly formed. And the worst part is that it does not go unanswered. It produces a wrong answer. A man who lives with that question in his head long enough becomes the man who talks loud, or the man who makes himself useful, or the man who memorized the three techniques. All three are trying to pull from the outside a movement that only ever starts inside somebody else. The right question is a different one, and it is uncomfortable the way good questions are. What is left of me in the room after I walk out? Hold on to that question. It comes back at the end, turned into two measurements you can take by yourself without asking anybody for anything. Before I give you the 9 habits, I have to separate 3 things our language crushed into one word and that Rome deliberately kept apart. Because most people who suffer over this are not chasing respect at all. They are chasing one of the other two, and they do not know it. The first is fear. Fear is the fastest to get. It is the most efficient in the short run. You raise your voice, you have some power over the person, you make clear what happens if they do not do it, and they do it. Bosses get this in a week. Parents get this in an afternoon. Fear has one defining property. It requires presence. Fear works while you are watching. The second you leave the room, the behavior goes back to what it was. And it carries a hidden cost that only shows up years later. A man who is feared stops receiving bad news. Nobody tells you about the problem while it is still small. You are the last to know everything. You find out too late to fix anything, and you never understand why. The second is being liked. Being liked is good. There is nothing wrong with being liked, and I am not telling you to become unpleasant, which is one of the errors we are going to take apart shortly. But being liked has an exact limit, and the limit is disagreement. It works as long as you agree. The day you disagree with something the other person wants, you find out what it was really worth, and sometimes the answer is not much. The man who is liked gets invited to the party. The man who is liked is remembered fondly. The man who is liked is not consulted when the decision costs money. And the third is respect. And respect is the only one of the 3 that keeps working in your absence. That is the test, and it is one sentence. Keep it, because it works in any room, in any relationship, with any person, including with yourself. What happens to this when I leave the room? If it disappears, it was fear. If it turns into being missed, it was affection. If it keeps deciding things while you are not there, it was respect. And you can line all 3 up in one row as short as it gets. The feared man is obeyed. The liked man is invited. The respected man is consulted. Notice that consulted is the weakest sounding of the 3 and the strongest in substance. Being consulted means your reading of things has been filed as reliable inside another person's head, and that they will go looking for it on their own, spending their own time with nobody asking them to. It is the second look happening in real time. Now I am going to tell you about a man, and he is going to be the spine of this video. Let me ask you something first. Who was the most successful Roman emperor in history? If you thought Julius Caesar, he was never emperor, and he was stabbed 23 times on the Senate floor. If you thought Augustus, good answer. But he got there over a civil war and proscription lists with the names of men to be killed on them. If you thought Marcus Aurelius, he spent half his reign in a tent on the Danube frontier, buried most of his children, faced a plague that killed millions, and handed the empire to Commodus? The answer is a man whose name you have probably never heard, Antoninus Pius. He ruled Rome for 23 years. 23. And his reign was so stable, so peaceful, so free of catastrophe, that ancient historians have almost nothing to tell you about him. No epic war, no famous conspiracy, no scandal, no enormous monument built to himself. As emperor, he never once left Italy. He simply governed, and things simply worked, and when he died the treasury was full. The most successful man in the most powerful job in the ancient world is the man nobody remembers, precisely because he made no noise. And here is why I am bringing him into this video. Book 1 of Marcus Aurelius' Meditations is a list of thanks. Marcus writes down what he learned from each person in his life, his grandfather, his mother, his teachers. And then he gets to Antoninus, his adoptive father, and the paragraph will not end. It is by far the longest in the book. And later, in Book 6, he comes back to it and writes himself a direct order. In everything, be a disciple of Antoninus. Notice he did not write, be a disciple of Socrates. He did not write, be a disciple of Zeno, the founder of his own school. With the entire library of Greek philosophy available to him, he wrote down the name of the old man he used to have dinner with. And what he describes is nothing spectacular. That is the point. Listen to the list. Antoninus examined things all the way to the end, without dropping the investigation halfway because he got tired. Once he had examined and decided, he did not reverse under pressure, and Marcus uses the word unshakable. He would listen to anyone who had something useful to contribute, no matter who they were. He gave each man according to merit, not according to closeness. He knew when to push and when to let go. He had no vanity at all about the honors he received. He put up with people who criticized him unfairly without hitting back. He did not listen to gossip. He never did anything in a hurry. And one line that always stops me: nothing about him was done to be seen, and he could receive praise without the praise changing anything in him. And then comes the quietest detail of all. Marcus Aurelius praises his adoptive father for having no mania for building, for eating little, for wearing the same clothes, for sleeping in the same place, and for keeping the same friends his entire life without either getting tired of them or becoming infatuated with them. This is the portrait of a man with no levitas, a man who does not get displaced. A man who is the same thing in front of the Senate and at his own dinner table, on the good day and the bad day, with a consul and with a tax collector from a small town. And Marcus actually cites that scene, a tiny episode about how Antoninus treated some nobody who came to apologize. And now the ending, which is the most stoic thing ever done by a man who never wrote a line of philosophy. Antoninus Pius died at 74, at home, of natural causes, which is already rare for a Roman emperor. On the last night, he did two things. First, he had the golden statue of Fortune, which stood in the emperor's bedroom, carried into Marcus Aurelius' room. That is how he transferred the empire. No ceremony, no speech, no audience. He just had the statue moved into the other man's room. Second, the tribune of the guard came in, the way he came in every night, to ask for the watchword of the night. And Antoninus gave the watchword: Aequanimitas. Equanimity, evenness of mind. That was the last official word of his empire. A dying man hands over the password of the day, and the password is equanimity. And he was not even being poetic. He was answering the routine request of an officer on duty. That is the weight this video is talking about. And look at what it does not contain. No memorable line delivered in public, no confrontation won, no audience, nothing that would fit into a 30-second clip. It contains 23 years of one thing done the same way every day. Now I need to give you the contrast, because contrast teaches faster than example. In the same empire, 100 years earlier, lived the most eloquent man Rome ever produced, Marcus Tullius Cicero. He was not from a noble family. No name, no army, no old money, none of what Rome normally required of a man who wanted to rise. He had exactly one thing, and that thing was his voice. And with his voice he became consul, the highest office of the Republic, something almost no man without a surname ever managed in the entire history of Rome. He dismantled the Catiline conspiracy by talking. He destroyed opponents in court by talking. He is still, 2,000 years later, the ruler by which speaking well in Latin is measured. And I want to be very fair here, because the point is not that speaking is bad. Cicero was brilliant. He was genuinely brave at several moments, and the Republic owed him real things. The point is what happened at the end. Cicero attacked Mark Antony in a series of speeches, the Philippics, ferocious, unforgettable speeches, the best he ever wrote, and Mark Antony won the power. Cicero's name went onto the proscription list. They caught him in a litter, escaping. It is said that he leaned his head out and offered his neck to the soldiers, which is the most dignified thing he ever did. And then Mark Antony did something that was not necessary. He had Cicero's head and Cicero's hands nailed to the speaker's platform in the forum, exactly where he had given speeches his whole life. And the story goes that Fulvia, Antony's wife, took the head, pulled the tongue out, and stabbed it over and over with her hairpin. I am not telling you that scene to be morbid. I am telling you because it is the most literal thing history has ever written down. They did not take revenge on the man. They took revenge on the voice, because that is exactly where everything he had was kept. And the law that comes out of that is hard. A man who builds everything on his voice reaches exactly as far as his voice carries, and falls the day somebody decides to silence it. Meanwhile, the old man, giving the watchword to the officer on duty, went 23 years without anyone in Rome needing to shout. There are 2 more men I need to bring in, and they will hold up specific habits later. The first is Epictetus. Epictetus was born a slave of Epaphroditus, who was a secretary to the Emperor Nero. He was lame in one leg, probably from a badly treated fracture. He had no family name, no property, no legal right to have an opinion about anything. If anyone in history had grounds to say that being respected depends on your circumstances, it was him. And he is the one who wrote, in the Enchiridion, the little handbook his students assembled from his lectures, the most direct thing ever written on this subject. He says, in chapter 33, set for yourself, right now, a character and a standard of conduct, one you will keep both when you are alone and when you are with others. And then he lists it. Be silent for the most part. Or say what is necessary in few words. Do not talk about gladiators, or horse races, or athletes, or food, or drink, which was the Roman equivalent of sports, shows, and internet politics. And above all, do not talk about yourself, your own deeds, or your own dangers. And he finishes with a detail almost nobody notices. If the conversation around you turns into that, go quiet. And if you can change the subject without making it awkward, change it. This is not a mystery technique, it is hygiene. He is saying that speech is a resource most people spend on things that build nothing. And the second is Seneca. And Seneca comes in here for the most interesting reason of all, because he was the opposite. Seneca was enormously wealthy, one of the richest men in Rome. He was the most elegant writer of his generation. And his job, for years, was to write the speeches Nero would read out loud in order to be obeyed. He literally manufactured other men's volume for a living. So when Seneca writes about talking too much, he's not speaking from outside. He's speaking from inside, and that gives you weight. There is a letter of his, number 40, that is practically a lecture on this video. He talks about a man named Serapio, a famous speaker whose words came out so fast they tumbled over each other. And Seneca says, and I am paraphrasing closely, this does not suit a philosopher. Speech that serves the truth should be plain and unornamented, and it should fall like steady rain, not crash down like a torrent. And he adds something sharp. That hurried delivery belongs to a man who wants to sweep a crowd along, not to a man who wants to be understood. Steady rain, not a torrent. That is a good image to keep. And there is another letter of his, number 47, which is the most uncomfortable of the whole set and will hold up the 8th habit, but I am going to save it for there. Before the 9 habits, I have to stop and say out loud what this video is not. I have to do that because this subject, more than almost any other, gets hijacked constantly. You type respect without raising your voice into any search bar, and you get a truckload of content about dominance, about aura, about how to make people feel small around you. That is not stoicism. That is the same volume race in more expensive shoes. So there are 5 warnings, and I want them to land as hard as the habits do. First warning: this is not going quiet. There is a lazy reading of silence that says, speak as little as possible, be mysterious, let people wonder what you are thinking. That does not produce weight. It produces absence. The man who says nothing is not read as deep. He is read as not being there, and after a while people stop directing words at him at all, which is exactly the problem you came here to solve. The silence in these 9 habits is a very specific silence. It is silence about yourself. It is not speaking about your own deeds, your own plans, your own sacrifices, your own virtues. That is completely different from not speaking. You are going to speak. You will disagree, propose, explain, teach. What you are going to stop doing is using speech as a display case. Second warning: this is not going cold. Some people here wait and understand stone face. Never smile. Never show enthusiasm. Never let it show that you liked something, because liking something gives away power. Seneca wrote, and it is one of the most human passages in all of Stoicism, that the wise man also goes pale. That in the face of a shock, the wise man's body reacts like anyone else's, and that this is no vice at all, because the first reaction is not a choice. What gets governed is what comes after it. A stone face is not gravitas. A stone face is a mask, and a mask is borrowed weight, exactly like the shout. In fact, coldness is usually the strategy of a man who is afraid that if he shows anything, it will become obvious there is not that much there. It is levitas in a suit. Third warning, and this is the one most people get wrong. This is not avoiding conflict. The man who never disagrees is not respected. He is politely ignored, which is far worse than being contradicted, because it is a form of invisibility that arrives with a smile. Speaking quietly is not speaking little, and it is not letting things slide. You will disagree, and you will disagree in front of people, and sometimes you will disagree with your boss. The difference is that disagreement with weight is said once, with a fact, at normal volume, and then not repeated at increasing volume until somebody folds. It comes with no adjective, no irony, none of that little laugh. It is stated the way a measurement is stated. Fourth warning: nothing here is done to produce an effect in another person. This is the warning that separates this video from the garbage. If you run the 9 habits with the goal of making somebody see you differently, they will not work. And the reason is technical, not moral. The thing leaks. You will pause while watching to see whether the pause worked. You will decline to defend yourself and then check whether anyone noticed that you did not defend yourself. And it is perceptible. It always is. And there is a crueler practical consequence. A man who does it to collect starts counting, and a man who counts quits. 3 weeks in, you will think I did all of this and nobody noticed, and you will go back to raising your voice, this time with resentment behind it. Fifth warning, and this is the most honest one. This is not a guarantee. There are people who will never respect you, not because you have no weight, but because respecting you is expensive for them. There are bosses who need you to stay the one who executes. There are relatives who need you to stay the boy. There are people whose entire position depends on you not having a voice, and no quiet habit fixes that, because it is not about you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, in Book 9, a line that is almost a relief in how realistic it is. It is impossible that there should be no shameless people in the world. And he finishes with the practical half. So why are you astonished when you meet one? The harm he does is his own character, and his character is his problem. If you walk into the 9 habits expecting everyone to change how they treat you, you will be disappointed. If you walk into them because this is a better way to be a man, the rest comes on its own, from the people who are in a position to give it. Now the contract of this video, and it is short, there are 9 habits. All of them are things you do, not things you say to somebody. None of them requires the other person to do, know, change, or acknowledge anything. None of them needs an audience. None of them can be announced, and most of them stop working if they are. None of them is fast. The first real effect you feel does not come from the room. It comes from inside, and it comes at around 3 weeks. And you do not need all 9. If you do 3, your life changes. If you only do 1, do the 9th, because the 9th is what holds up the other 8. Let us start with the first. Habit number 1, the 1-second delay. The habit is this: do not answer at the speed of the question. 1 second, maybe 2. Between the end of the other person's sentence and the beginning of yours there is a space, and almost everybody learned to fill that space with panic. And I want you to understand why the space exists before I tell you how to use it. Because if you use it without understanding it, it turns into that hollow dominance technique we already threw out. Epictetus has a passage in the Discourses that is practically an instruction manual. He says that when an impression arrives, forcefully, demanding an immediate response, you should speak to it. Literally speak to it. And what you say is, "Wait for me a moment, impression. Let me see what you are and what you represent. Let me test you." Notice what he is describing. The impression arrives in a hurry. The hurry is part of it. A provocation arrives together with the demand that you answer now. A hard question arrives together with the feeling that hesitating is defeat. A request arrives wrapped in an atmosphere where saying no in that exact second would be rude. Speed is not a detail of the situation. Speed is the weapon of the situation. So what are you doing when you answer instantly? You are handing the decision to whoever built the question. An answer that comes out in half a second is not yours. It belongs to the shape of the question. It comes from reflex, and your reflex was trained by the last 20 years, not by your judgment. Now the social side, which is what matters for the subject of this video. A man who answers instantly gives away 3 pieces of information he did not mean to give away. First, that he was assembling his answer while the other person was talking, which means he was not listening. Second, that the answer existed before the question did, which means it is an off-the-shelf opinion. Third, and worst, that this person's approval is urgent to him. The rush to answer is the closest thing to approval anxiety there is, and you do not need to be a psychologist to feel it. Everybody feels it. It is why a salesman who answers too fast triggers distrust the customer cannot explain, and the reverse is just as automatic. When somebody stops for 1 second before answering, the room understands without reasoning about it that the answer is being produced right now, on the spot, specifically for this. And a custom-made answer weighs more than an off-the-shelf one. That is not magic. That is information. How to do it in practice without it turning into theater. The trick is not to try to be silent. Trying to be silent produces that awkward hole. The trick is to have something to do inside the second. Use the second to form an internal question, and always the same one. What is this person actually asking me for? Because it is almost never what they said. The boss who asks, "Can this be ready today?" is not asking for a date. He is asking for reassurance. The friend who says, "Maybe I should quit this job," is not asking for advice. He is asking for permission. The person who says, "Did you see the state of the kitchen?" is rarely talking about the kitchen. While you go looking for the answer to that question, the second passes on its own. And then you are not pausing to look like anything. You are pausing because you are doing something. That is why this pause sounds different from the pause of a man who practiced aura in the mirror, because it is occupied. There is a longer version of the same habit, and it is the one that will pay you the most over an entire career. It is letting the answer slip. Anytime the thing does not require an immediate decision, and most things do not, you say a sentence that sounds small and is enormous. Let me think about it and I will tell you tomorrow. Seneca wrote, in his book on anger, that the best remedy against anger is delay, because anger is strong at the start and then collapses on its own. He tells us his own teacher did exactly that. Postpone. Not to escape, but because time is the only agent that separates what you want to do from what you should do. And there is a massive social side effect. The man who says, I will tell you tomorrow, and then tells you tomorrow, without anyone having to chase him, builds in 2 months a kind of reliability that no speech builds. The sentence becomes a small promise, kept repeatedly in front of everybody, without ever drawing attention to itself. And now the trap of habit 1, because every habit in this video has one. The trap is using the second as power. You have seen this. The man who leaves the question hanging longer than necessary, staring to watch the other person shift in their chair. That is not a habit. That is a microaggression everyone notices and nobody comments on, and it costs exactly what a shout costs, only quietly. The signal that tells you which one you are doing is simple. In the habit, you are looking inward, hunting for the answer. In the trap, you are looking at the person, hunting for a reaction. If your second of silence is being spent observing somebody else's discomfort, you are not building weight. You are making noise without sound. And remember the line, a man who has to raise his voice is borrowing the weight he does not have. There is a silent version of exactly the same thing, and this is it. Anytime silence is used as pressure, it is volume. Habit number 2, not correcting what does not matter. This is the cheapest habit on the list and the one that pays fastest, and almost nobody does it. Someone tells a story and gets the year wrong. You correct it. Someone says the restaurant is on the north side and it is on the south. You correct it. Someone attributes the quote to the wrong author and you, who know, correct it. Someone mispronounces a foreign word. You use the word correctly in your next sentence, casually, which is the most elegant and most infuriating form of correction there is. None of those corrections changes anything, but every one of them costs something, and that is the part nobody calculates. Here is the arithmetic. Every correction you make comes out of the same pocket as the correction that matters. If you spend 12 corrections a week on irrelevant things, then on the day you say, wait, that is wrong about something that is going to cost the company real money, your sentence walks into the room pre-classified. It arrives as the 13th correction of the month, not as an alarm, and the person receiving it already has their guard up because they have learned that with you, everything is a correction. You spent your weight on the release year of a movie. Marcus Aurelius has a passage in Book 4 where he writes himself a rule of economy. He says, do few things if you want tranquility. And he follows it with what I think is one of the most useful questions in all of Stoicism. On every action, ask yourself, is this necessary? And he says that most of what we do and most of what we say is not necessary, and that a man who removes the unnecessary gains both time and peace. That is the question, and it applies to speech more than to anything else. Before correcting 3 seconds, is this necessary? And the practical test is even easier. Does the correction change a decision? Does it change an outcome? Does it protect somebody from a loss? If not, it is vanity. Not malice, vanity, which is far more common and far more expensive. Because deep down you know why you correct. Correcting is the fastest way to show that you know. It is a withdrawal against your own account to buy 2 seconds of recognition. And that is exactly what a Roman would have called levitas, the behavior of a man who needs his value confirmed right now instead of accumulated. There are 2 variations of this habit that are worth more than the original. The first is not finishing other people's sentences. You know where the sentence is going, so you jump ahead to save time. Except the message that lands is not efficiency. It is my time is worth more than yours. Letting somebody finish a sentence you already understood is one of the quietest heavy things a person can do. The second is not competing with stories. You know somebody who does this. You mention a sore throat and he tells you about his tonsillitis. You describe your trip and he describes the better trip. It is automatic, and most people who do it have no idea they do it. And it is expensive. A man who always has a bigger story is announcing every round that he needs the round. Leaving somebody else's story standing without covering it, improving it, or competing with it is something people register without being able to name. They walk away from the conversation thinking it is good to talk to him, and they do not know why. The reason is that in that conversation, they were not fighting for space. And the trap of habit too. The trap is confusing, not correcting, with letting everything slide. There are mandatory corrections, and they come in three kinds. Corrections that prevent concrete harm, corrections that stop an injustice against somebody who is not in the room to defend themselves, and corrections where you are the responsible technical authority, and silence would be negligence. In those three cases you speak, and you speak once, with a fact and without a tone. What changes is the ratio. If you currently correct 15 things a week, and 3 of them matter, cutting the 12 does not make you weaker. It makes the 3 land with the weight of all 15. Habit number 3, saying, I do not know. 4 words. And I would say it is the habit with the largest gap between how much it builds and how little it gets used. Somebody asks you something, and you do not know. What happens inside you, in under a second, is a small emergency. And most people resolve that emergency by producing sound. I think it is roughly like this, or I read somewhere that, or a generic explanation that occupies the space of an answer without saying anything. That seems harmless. It is not. Let me show you the mechanism, because it is beautiful in its simplicity. When a man never says, I do not know, every piece of information that comes out of his mouth carries the same rating. What he is absolutely certain of and what he guessed come out with the same tone, the same face, the same confidence. And then something inevitable happens. The listener cannot tell them apart. And when you cannot tell the solid from the guess, the listener's brain does the only reasonable thing. It discounts all of it. Everything he says is now worth slightly less. Now flip it. The man who says, I do not know when he does not know, is doing something far more powerful than admitting ignorance. He is calibrating the instrument. He is saying, without saying it, when I speak with conviction, it is real conviction, because you just watched me decline to fake it. The I do not know is what gives value to the yes. And there is a superior version, the one that changes careers. I do not know, but I will find out and get back to you. And then finding out and getting back to them. That is the closest thing to an authority manufacturing machine that I know of, and there is nothing spectacular in it. It is just a small loop of minimum promise and delivery, repeated. In 6 months you become the person whose word is good, and none of that was built with a single impressive sentence. Socrates, whom the Stoics treated as the patron saint of a whole enterprise, built his entire reputation on this. The oracle at Delphi said he was the wisest man in Athens, and he spent years trying to prove the oracle wrong. He went and talked to the politicians, the poets, the craftsmen, and he arrived at the conclusion that became the most famous line in philosophy. The difference between him and everyone else is that they thought they knew, and he knew that he did not. Notice that the result of that was not being considered ignorant. The result was becoming the West's reference point for wisdom for 2,500 years. There is a second piece to this habit, and it gets used even less, saying, I was wrong. Not, I expressed myself poorly. Not, what I actually meant was wrong. And saying it the short way, with no defense wrapped around it, and without the performative modesty that is even worse. That guy who accuses himself so elaborately that the self-criticism turns into another speech about him. Just. I was wrong about that. The right answer is this. Let us move on. People who do this discover something counterintuitive. You lose nothing. You gain because you just proved, in front of everybody, that you prefer the correct thing to your own image. And that is literally the criterion people use without knowing it, to decide whether your word can be used as the basis for their decisions. The trap of habit 3, and it is real. There is a way of saying, I do not know, that is an escape hatch. It is the I do not know that exists to avoid committing, to avoid picking up the ball, to avoid having to do work. That builds nothing, and people spot it fast. The difference is what comes after the comma. I do not know, full stop, and the thing hangs there. That is escape. I do not know, but I will have an answer for you by Thursday. That is wait. And there is another trap, subtler. The fake I do not know, said by someone who does know, in order to seem humble. It is one of the fastest things any group detects. That is not humility. It is the same vanity from habit 2 worn backwards. If you know, say it. In few words, without ornament, and without telling the story of how you came to know it. Habit number 4. Promising less than you deliver. This is the most mechanical habit on the list, and the one most people destroy without noticing, because it gets destroyed by kindness. You say you will send it by Friday, you send it Monday. You say you will be there at 8, you get there at 8:15. You say you will call tonight, you call tomorrow. You say I will take care of that for you, with every good intention in the world, and then the week swallows it. And each one of those seems small. It is small. Nobody died. Except there is arithmetic here, and it is not intuitive. Your given word is the only part of your speech that is verifiable. Think about that. Everything else you say in a conversation is opinion, analysis, forecast, impression. None of it can be checked. But when you say, I will send it by Friday, you have just emitted a sentence that the universe is going to test, in front of everybody, on Friday. It is the only sentence of yours with an objective result. So that is the one the room uses to calibrate all the others. That is not a conscious choice anybody makes. It is how human heads work. In the absence of another way to measure, you measure by what can be measured. And here is the hidden cost, which is bigger than it looks. A broken promise does not cost you 1 unit of trust. It changes the interest rate on every future sentence you say. After the 3rd time, when you say, I will send it by Friday, the person does not hear Friday. They hear probably Monday or Tuesday, and they plan around that, without telling you. And then something almost invisible happens, and it is the heart of this video's problem. You stopped being a fixed point. You became an estimate, and nobody rests his weight on an estimate. That is levitas in its purest form. You cannot be built upon, because you move. Seneca wrote a short line in one of the letters that sums up the whole subject. He said, the first sign of a well-ordered mind is the ability to stop and stay with itself. And he followed it with something that should be written on the door of every office. Make your speech agree with your life. Agree. The words and the life saying the same thing. That is not an abstract moral demand. It is the operational definition of weight. A man in whom the word and the fact are the same thing does not need volume, because reality confers him silently, repeatedly, in front of everybody. The practical protocol is almost absurdly simple, and nobody does it. Rule 1. Promise the date you could hit on a bad day, not on a good one. You calculate deadlines imagining the ideal week. The ideal week does not exist. If you think it takes 3 days, say 5. Deliver on 4. You just turned a normal delivery into an early one without working an extra minute. Rule 2. If you are going to be late, say so in advance. Not on the day. In advance. And the notice is not a long apology. It is information. Friday is not happening. Tuesday is. And here is why. 1 line. A man who warns you in advance stays reliable even while running late, because what is being measured is not the date. It is whether your word can be built upon. Rule 3, and this is the hardest. Stop promising things out of generosity. Half the broken promises in the world were made by good people trying to give a good answer in the moment. Somebody asks you for help and you say, "Of course, count on me." And what you meant was, "I like you." Then you do not do it. And the message that lands is not "he is busy." The message that lands is not "he is busy." It is better to say "I cannot" than to say "I will look into it" and disappear. A no is a solid object. People can organize around a no. Nobody can organize around a maybe that turned into silence. And now, the part of this habit that is silent, which is why it is in this video. Do not announce the delivery. The man who delivers and then spends 3 days finding ways to mention that he delivered and how hard it was and how late he stayed is collecting his change on the spot. He has turned the delivery into a closed transaction. No weight is left over, only a receipt. What builds is the delivery that shows up on its own. It is done, full stop. Because silence after delivering communicates something no sentence communicates, that this was normal for you. And the trap of habit 4. The trap is becoming the man who promises nothing so he can never fail. The one who always says, "I will see, I will have a look, if I can, I will do it." That man carries no risk and therefore carries no weight. Reliability only exists where there was a real possibility of failing. Promise. Promise less than you can do, but promise something with a date out loud. Habit number 5. Not defending yourself against small accusations. This is the habit that separates weight from no weight the fastest. And it is the hardest one on the list because it runs against an ancient reflex. The scene. Somebody says something mildly unfair about you in front of other people. It is not serious slander. It is a comment. "Oh, you are always late." Or, "He is pretty disorganized. That is just him." Or that joking tone with a barb inside it. And a physical pressure rises in you, almost intolerable, to clarify. You start assembling the defense before the sentence has even finished. You are going to explain that on that particular day there was a reason, that the traffic, that actually out of the 5 times, 3 were somebody else's fault. And here is the fact you need to accept, and it is unpleasant. A hurried defense is the closest thing to guilt there is. Not because it is guilt, but because the energy is identical. The urgency to clarify, the volume of detail, the tone rising slightly, all of it is read by the room as the behavior of someone who got hit. And being hit by a small comment is the clearest possible evidence that the comment found something in there. Meanwhile, the same accusation, received with a calm silence or an okay, dies in 2 seconds because it had nothing to react against. Epictetus wrote the most direct text that exists on this, and it is in 2 passages. The first is in chapter 33 of the Enchiridion. He says, "If someone tells you that so-and-so has been speaking badly about you, do not defend yourself against what was said. Just answer, 'Clearly he does not know my other faults, or he would not have mentioned only those.' I want you to notice what that answer does. It is not sarcasm. It is the complete demolition of the game. It says, 'I am not a man who thinks he is flawless, so an accusation is not news about me, and I am not going to walk into a courtroom nobody convened.'" The second passage is chapter 48, and it is the harder one. Epictetus is describing how to recognize somebody who is actually making progress in philosophy. And his sign is not wisdom, not calm, not eloquence. The sign is, he accuses no one, he praises no one, he blames no one, he complains about no one, and he does not talk about himself as though he were somebody who knew something. He does not accuse and he does not defend. He puts those 2 together on purpose because they are the same vice. Accusing and defending are the 2 activities of a man who still believes that the conversation about him is the most important conversation happening. And remember Antoninus Pius. In the middle of that long list of qualities, Marcus Aurelius includes one specific line. He put up with people who criticized him unfairly, without hitting back. A man with absolute power over the life of any Roman, who could have ended a critic with one sentence, and the thing his adopted son chose to write down about him was that he did not hit back. Now I have to give you the boundary, because this habit without a boundary turns into negligence. There are accusations that require an answer, and they are these, the ones that materially change somebody's life. If they say you stole, if they say you did something that is going to cost you the job, the contract, the relationship with your child, if the lie is about to become somebody else's decision, in those cases you answer. But you answer the way a measurement is presented, and the way is this: once, not 3 times, with a fact, not with outrage. That did not happen. This happened. Here it is, in the right channel, not to the audience. If the accusation is about to work, it gets resolved with the person responsible, not in the group chat, and without demanding a retraction. You delivered the fact. What the person does with it is theirs. And the difference between that kind of answer and the hurried defense is not the content, it is the temperature. The defense wants to be believed. The answer merely records. The trap of habit 5 is the most dangerous one in this entire video, so pay attention. The trap is resentful silence. It is when you do not defend yourself on the outside and then spend the next 3 hours assembling the defense on the inside. You gained nothing. You only moved the location of noise. And worse, that kind of silence goes sour, and on the day it finally comes out all at once and out of proportion, and now you are the one who looks unstable. The test for whether you did the habit or the trap is a single question. How long did you think about it afterward? If you did not defend yourself and it was gone from your head in 10 minutes, that was the habit. If you did not defend yourself and then rewrote the perfect comeback in the shower, that was just postponement. And if it is the second one, that is fine. That is how it starts. But the work is not on the outside, it is in the judgment. Marcus Aurelius has the shortest and most useful line about it. Take away the judgment, and you have taken away the complaint. The comment on its own cannot wound you. It becomes a wound when you add the second sentence, and the second sentence is always the same one. And now they are going to think that is what I am. Habit number 6. Listening all the way through, especially when you already know the answer. There is a line attributed to Zeno of Citium, the founder of stoicism, that survived because it is too short to forget. Somebody asked him why he spoke so little. He said, because nature gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we would listen twice as much as we speak. And I always found that line a little too cute, almost fortune cookie, until I understood what it is actually saying in its Greek context. It is not about being polite. It is about the ratio between collecting and spending. Speaking is spending. Listening is collecting. And a man who spends more than he collects runs out of material. But the habit I want to give you here is not listen more. It is something far more specific and far harder. Listen all the way through when you already know what is going to be said. Because listening when you do not know is easy. That is just curiosity. The real test is when the person is in the middle of their 3rd sentence and you have already solved the problem, already formed the answer, and are now simply waiting for their mouth to stop moving so you can talk. That is the moment. That is where it gets decided. And I am going to give you 2 reasons not to cut in. 1 noble and 1 self-interested. And the self-interested one is more convincing. The noble one, when you cut off somebody whose point you already got, you are not saving time. You are informing them that their processing speed is too slow for you. Nobody forgets that. People forget arguments. They do not forget the feeling of having been hurried. The self-interested one, and here is the secret, you are wrong about knowing what they were going to say more often than you think. You understood the problem, but you did not understand the request. You have seen this case, but you have not seen this case. And above all, the most important part of what people say is almost always at the end. We always start with the presentable version and work our way toward the truth as we talk. The employee starts by saying the deadline is tight and ends by saying he does not know how to do it. The spouse starts by talking about the calendar and ends by talking about loneliness. A man who cuts in at sentence 3 never gets to sentence 7. And a man who never gets to sentence 7 solves the wrong problem with tremendous confidence, which is the most efficient way to lose authority there is. The protocol, and it is a hard rule, not a suggestion. You are not allowed to disagree with somebody until you can restate their argument in a way they would recognize as fair. Not agree with it. Just be able to say, "So what you are saying is this, because of this," and have the person answer, "Yes, exactly." When you do that, two things happen at once, and both are good. The person relaxes, because being understood is rare, and it disarms. And your disagreement, if it comes after that, arrives with a weight it could never have had before, because now it cannot be dismissed with "you did not understand." A large share of the long arguments in the world consist of two people explaining themselves again, because neither one managed to prove they had listened. There is a physical detail I have to include, because it changes everything and costs nothing. While the person is talking, do nothing else. Nothing. Do not glance at the phone on the table. Do not finish typing that last word. Do not look at the door when somebody walks past. That is worth more than anything you are going to say afterward, and it is the single most effective quiet habit on this list, because undivided attention has become a scarce good. When you give somebody your whole attention for 2 minutes, you hand them something most people have not received from anyone in weeks. The trap of habit 6, performed listening. It is the man who learned to nod, to lean in, to say in the gaps, while internally hearing nothing, just running the choreography of listening. That is worse than not listening, because the person finds out. They find out the moment your answer contains nothing from what they said. And then they conclude, correctly, that the attention was staged, and you lose in 1 minute everything the choreography spent an hour building. The sign that the listening was real is always the same, and it is verifiable. Your answer contains a piece of information that only existed inside their words. Habit number 7. Not telling your own story unless you are asked. This is the heart of the silence this video is about, and it is the hardest one to let go of. Epictetus wrote, in chapter 46 of the Enchiridion, an image I consider the best thing ever written about reputation, and is about sheep. He says, "Do not call yourself a philosopher, and do not go around lecturing laymen about philosophical principles. Do what the principles tell you to do. Because sheep do not go to the shepherd to show him how much they ate. They digest the food inside, and on the outside they produce wool and milk. Do not announce what you ate, show the wool." And Marcus Aurelius has his own version of the same thing in Book 5, and it is even sharper because he describes 3 types of men in sequence. The first does someone a favor and immediately bills for it. "There, I did that for you." The second does not bill out loud, but internally he has written it down. He carries silently the ledger of who owes him. And the third, Marcus writes, barely even knows what he did. He is like the vine, which produces the grape, and looks for nothing more once it has produced its own fruit. Notice that the second type, the one keeping the internal ledger, is where nearly everybody lives, including good people. You do not bill, you just remember, and you remember with impressive accounting precision everything you did for others that was never repaid. The practical habit here has 4 cuts, and I am going to give you all of them. Cut 1. Do not tell people what you did. The hours, the effort, the sacrifice, the late night, what you gave up. If the work showed, it showed. If it did not show, telling people will not make the work appear. It will make the account of the work appear, which is a different thing and worth less. Cut 2. Do not tell people what you are going to do. And this is the most expensive one, because announcing plans is addictive. Telling people about the new project, the training you are starting, the course you are taking, the change that is coming. There is a mechanical problem here. Telling delivers part of the reward before the delivery. You collect the admiring look today, free of charge, and tomorrow the thing becomes slightly less urgent, because part of the prize has already been paid out. Cut 3. Do not tell people who you know, how much you have, or where you have been. The name dropped casually into conversation. The number mentioned without any need for it. The place cited as a time marker, as in back when I was living in Tokyo. Everybody notices. Nobody comments. And each of those coins buys 2 seconds and costs a little wait. Cut 4, and this one is the hardest. Do not report your pain unless you are asked. I have to be careful here, because I am not telling you to swallow everything and become a sealed man, which is a terrible idea and it kills people. You should talk about what you are feeling. With 1 or 2 chosen people, at whatever depth is required, as many times as you need to. What this habit cuts is something else. It is pain reported in volume to anybody as a form of bonding. It is the man who finds a way in every single conversation to mention how tired he is, how much he works, how nobody helps him. That does not generate closeness, it generates fatigue, and after a while people start treating you as fragile, and a fragile man does not get consulted. 2 people at full depth, the rest of the world normal. And then comes the question that always arrives at this point, and it is a legitimate one. If I do not talk about what I do, how will anyone know? 2 answers. The first, they know more than you think. People talk about other people constantly. Work circulates on its own, and it circulates with an enormous advantage when you are not the one who reported it, because the same fact said by a third party is worth several times more than the same fact said by you. There is a sentence somebody else can say about you that you can never say about yourself. The second answer is the one that separates this from naivety. There is a difference between reporting and boasting. You are obligated to report. In the meeting, status gets given. At the end of the month, the number gets presented. In the interview, what you did gets stated, clearly and without false modesty, because that is exactly what was asked. The difference is context and repetition. A report is said once where it is owed, in a neutral tone. Boasting is said spontaneously several times in a context that did not ask for it. The test: did somebody ask? Is the information necessary for a decision? If both answers are no, it is a display case. The trap of habit 7 is ostentatious silence. It is the man who discovered this habit and now makes a point of letting everyone know that he does not talk about his achievements. He says things like, "Oh, I would rather not get into that," or "I am not one to show off." That is the same display case with a sign on the front that says humility. It is worse, because now he is boasting about 2 things, the accomplishment and the modesty. If you are not going to talk about it, do not talk about it, including not talking about it. Habit number 8. Treating people the same when they can give you nothing. This is the quietest habit on the list, and paradoxically, the most observed of all. The waiter, the doorman, the driver, the intern, the person on the phone line, the delivery guy, the woman who cleans the building, the cashier at 11 at night. Everybody around you is reading how you treat those people. Everybody. Always. And nobody says anything about it, which is why most people do not realize they are being read. And the reason that reading is so powerful is logical, not moral. How you treat somebody who can give you something tells you nothing about the person. It tells you about the interest. Anybody can be charming with their boss's boss. That is purchase behavior, and purchase behavior is not data. How you treat somebody who can neither give you nor take from you anything at all is the only clean sample of your character available for public observation. It is literally the only one. Everything else is contaminated by interest. Which is why a person whose tone changes with a hierarchy gives away everything at once. It is not that they are evil. It is that they have just demonstrated that their behavior is a function of the other person's position. And what is a function of the other person's position is, by definition, operable. It is levitas in its most visible form, the wind deciding who he is every 10 minutes. And the man who is the same with everyone, from the janitor to the owner, is displaying the one thing Rome called constantia, constancy, being the same thing at every temperature. Seneca wrote his most uncomfortable letter about this, number 47, and it is about slaves, in the harshest slave society of the ancient world, written by a man who owned slaves, which makes it both an uneasy document and a genuinely brave one for the year it was written. He starts by saying he has heard that Lucilius eats dinner with his slaves, and that plenty of people find that scandalous. And then he takes the whole thing apart. He writes, "They are slaves? No, they are men. They are slaves? No, they are housemates. They are slaves? No, they are fellow slaves, if you consider that fortune has exactly the same power over them and over you." And he describes the typical Roman dinner, and the description is brutal. The slaves stood all night, motionless, and were not allowed to speak, not allowed to cough, not allowed to sneeze. Any sound was punished with a beating. And Seneca observes, in that cold way of his, they spend the entire night in silence and hunger, and then the master wonders why his slaves talk about him behind his back. And he closes with the line, "I wish were painted on the wall of every place where a hierarchy exists. Live with your inferior the way you would want your superior to live with you." Remember Antoninus Pius. In the middle of that long list of imperial virtues, Marcus Aurelius chose to record one tiny episode, how Antoninus treated a tax collector from some small town who came to apologize for something. Out of 23 years of imperial decisions, the son remembered how the old man treated an unimportant civil servant. The practice is short. Learn the name, not the job title, the name, and use the name. Look at the face when you speak. Most people talk to service workers while looking at their phone, at the menu, at the screen. Looking at the face costs nothing and is registered by everyone. Never use somebody as an audience. That moment when a person makes a little joke at the waiter's expense to get a laugh from the table is one of the most revealing things there is, and it reveals the opposite of what the person doing it believes it reveals. In the final test, the hardest one, how you behave when something goes wrong. The order came out wrong. The driver took the wrong route. The system went down. That is the moment the mask comes off. You can solve the problem firmly. Say that it is wrong. Ask for it to be corrected, all without changing your tone. And if you can do that, whoever is with you will notice, and will keep noticing for a long time. The trap of habit 8 is performed kindness. It is the man who is kind to the waiter a little too largely, and then comments afterward on how badly people treat waiters. He was not treating the waiter. He was using the waiter as scenery to demonstrate a virtue. If you notice you did something good and felt an urge for somebody to have seen it, that is the signal. It is not serious, it is human. But make a note of it, because that is exactly the difference between the second and the third type of man Marcus Aurelius described, between the one keeping the ledger and the vine that has already forgotten it made a grape. Habit number 9. Carrying a discomfort nobody knows you are carrying. This is the last one. It is the strangest on the list, and it is the one that holds up the other 8. If you only do one, do this one. The habit is, choose every day one uncomfortable thing. Do it and tell nobody. And before you decide this is the disciplined speech you have heard 1,000 times, I need to explain why this is in a video about respect. Because the connection is not obvious, and it is the most important thing I have to tell you today. Go back to the word levitas. To be light is to be movable. And the question almost nobody asks is, what exactly moves a man? It is not the other person's force. It is his own need. You are moved by the room because you need something that is in the room. You agree quickly because you need to be liked. You speak loudly because you need to be noticed right now. You do not say, "I do not know," because you need to look competent. You cannot let the accusation pass because you need to be seen as fair. You tell people what you did because you need it recorded. Every handle that exists on you is a need. And what are needs made of? They are made of things you have never tested living without. Seneca wrote about this in letter 18, and it is one of the most practical pieces of advice in all of stoicism. He tells Lucilius to set aside a few days each month to live as if he were poor. Bad food, rough clothing, a hard bed, on purpose, with money in the bank. And he explains why, and it is not suffering for its own sake. He says, so that when it comes for you, you will not be caught off guard. And he adds the question you ask yourself in the middle of those days, which is the line I would most like you to carry out of this entire video. Is this what I was afraid of? Look at the engineering. It is not about becoming hard. It is about shortening the list of things that can be used against you. Every discomfort you have proven you can take disappears from the list of things that move you. And that is why this habit is the foundation of the other 8. All 8 are difficult for exactly one reason. Each of them requires you to tolerate a small discomfort instead of relieving it immediately. The discomfort of the 1-second silence, the discomfort of not correcting, the discomfort of saying, I do not know, the discomfort of leaving an accusation hanging in the air. The discomfort of not telling. If you never train tolerating discomfort anywhere in your life, you will not manage to tolerate those. You will go back to filling all of them with noise, because noise is immediate relief. The practice, and it is boring on purpose. Choose one thing that is small, physical, daily, and invisible to everyone. Some examples. Getting up on the first alarm and out of bed immediately. No negotiation. Ending the shower with 30 seconds of cold water. Doing the walk even when you do not feel like it. Not eating the thing after dinner. Not touching the phone in the first hour of the day. The criterion is not difficulty. The criterion is that only you can verify it. Marcus Aurelius, in Book 5, writes the most human paragraph in the Meditations. He is negotiating with himself about getting out of bed in the morning, and he loses the argument about twice before he wins it. The most powerful man in the known world, on the Danube frontier, writing to himself, so I was made for this, was I, to lie here under the blankets keeping warm? That paragraph is the proof that habit 9 is made of things that are almost embarrassingly small. And now the rule that makes it worth double, in silence. Do not tell people you got up early. Do not tell people you trained. Do not tell people you stopped drinking. Do not tell people you are doing a challenge. 2 reasons, and both are technical. The first, telling delivers part of the reward before the delivery. You collect today's nod of approval for tomorrow's effort. And tomorrow's effort gets more expensive, because the price has already been paid. The second, and this is the one that matters for this video, if you tell, you've just tied the thing back to other people's reactions. You converted a training exercise in independence into a request for approval. It is the same movement as the man who talks loud, executed with a nicer vocabulary. What gets built in silence is a different relationship with yourself. You become somebody who does what he said he would do with no witness present. And that is not a motivational line, it is the only possible basis for trusting your own word. A man who keeps promises made to himself in secret starts keeping promises made to others automatically, because it became the same operation. The trap of habit 9 is penance. There is a version of this habit that is self-punishment dressed up as discipline. The man who picks harder and harder things, who punishes himself when he fails, who turned it into a moral debt that does not build weight, it builds anxiety, and it collapses within 2 weeks. The right tone is training, not penance. You choose, you do it, and if one day you fail, you go back the next day with no internal speech about it. Failing is not news about who you are. It is just Thursday. And there is a second, subtler trap, choosing a discomfort that is already comfortable for you. If you naturally wake up early, waking up early is not your training. The training has to hurt a little on your specific scale, and only you know what that is. Those are the 9. And now I want to show you something that probably went past you, because it only appears when all 9 are on the table at once. Go back and look at the list. Not answering at the speed of the question. Not correcting what does not matter. Saying I do not know. Promising less than you deliver. Not defending yourself against small accusations. Listening all the way through. Not telling your own story. Treating people the same when they can give you nothing. Carrying a discomfort in silence. Notice that not one of them is a skill. Not one of them is something you learn to do. All 9 are something you learn not to need to do. Not needing to answer immediately. Not needing to show that you know. Not needing to look competent. Not needing to be well regarded in that specific second. Not needing to be seen as fair. Not needing to speak. Not needing it recorded. Not needing the other person's position in order to know how to behave. Not needing immediate relief. 9 habits, 9 fewer needs, and that is where the whole thing closes, because need is exactly what makes a man light. Remember, I asked what moves a man, and the answer was not the other person's force, it was his own need. Nobody can move you by pushing. You can only move a man by pulling on something he needs. Every need you eliminate is a handle that disappears from your body. Weight, in the end, is not something you accumulate. It is what is left over when you stop spending, and that is why it is quiet. Not because silence is beautiful, but because most of what we say in excess is the sound of a need being met in public. Now I am going to give you the 2 measurements, because this channel does not run on feelings. You are going to want to know whether it is working. And if you go looking for the answer in people's faces, you have already lost. Because that is the same old dependency in new clothes. So here are 2 measurements you can take alone, on paper, without asking anyone for anything. Measurement 1. The voice interval. For 1 week, carry a piece of paper or use the Notes app and make 1 tally mark every time one of 3 things happens. You raised your tone in order to be heard, you interrupted somebody, or you repeated the same thing louder because nobody reacted the first time. Just a mark. No judgment, no analysis, no punishing yourself. A mark. In the first week, the number is going to shock you. That is normal, and it is the point. Almost everybody does this far more than they think, because it is automatic. The target is not 0. It never was. There are moments when raising your voice is the right thing to do. The target is the curve. If week 1 had 22 marks and week 6 has 9, your weight changed, and it changed before any single person started treating you differently. This is the more important of the 2 measurements, because it is entirely yours. It does not depend on any room. Measurement 2. The consultation count. This one is slower, and it is the only one that measures the second look. Every week, 1 question, answered in writing. How many times did somebody come to me to ask something they were not obligated to ask me? Notice how precise the question is. It is not how many compliments you got. Compliments are cheap and are frequently just politeness. It is not how many people were friendly. It is how many times somebody spent their own time on their own initiative to go get your read on something. Because consultation is the observable behavior of respect. It is the moment the second look turns into an action. And the timeline is long, and I have to be honest about it. This does not move in 3 weeks. The consultation curve starts shifting at around 3 months, and it shifts slightly at first. People filed you in a drawer over the course of years. They do not reopen the drawer the first week you stop defending yourself. Write down this week's number today. Write it down again in 90 days. Compare. That is it. And now the price, because there is a price, and I am not going to sell you this without naming it. First, at the start, some people are going to think you have become distant. You were the guy who joined in on everything, who had an opinion about everything, who always had a story. When you stop, the space gets strange for a while. People will ask if everything is okay. Somebody will say you have been quiet lately. Somebody will read it as arrogance, and it will be unfair. and you will have to sit with that without explaining, because explaining would be habit 5 broken in the first month. Second, and this one stings, you are going to find out how much of some of your relationships was made of shared noise. There are friendships held together by joint complaining. There are working relationships held together by gossip. When you stop participating in that, some of those relationships simply cool off, and it is not a fight, it is that there was no substance left underneath. That is a real loss, and you will feel it. Third, there will be a period somewhere between month 2 and month 3 where you do not know what your role in the room is. You are no longer the one who talks loud, and you are not yet the one who gets consulted. There is a gap. That gap is the most dangerous phase of the whole process, because that is where most people quit and go back to making noise, telling themselves it did not work. It had not worked yet. Different thing. And fourth, the most honest of all, there are rooms that are never going to change. There is a boss who needs you to be the one who executes. There is a family where your role was decided when you were 9. There are groups where every position is already locked and no new behavior gets read, because nobody is actually looking. In those cases, the 9 habits are not going to get you respect there. They are going to give you something else, something bigger, and something nobody sells in a video title. They are going to give you the information that this place does not have what you came for, and the steadiness to live without drama. And here I have to give the final warning, which is the same warning from the beginning, and is what separates this video from what it could have been. If you do the 9 habits in order to be respected, they do not work, and the reason is not mystical. It is mechanical. All 9 work because they reduce your need for other people's reactions. If the reason for doing them is to obtain a reaction from other people, you have not reduced any need at all. You have simply found a slower and more elegant way to do the same thing you were doing by shouting. And like every performance, it leaks, because you will be checking. Authority is a byproduct. Respect is a byproduct. A consequence is not a method. The only sustainable reason to do the 9 is the simplest and the least sellable one. Because this is a better way to be a man. Because a man who does not need to shout, does not need to correct, does not need to tell, and does not need to defend lives better, sleeps better, and decides better, even if nobody notices anything at all. And if the rest comes, and it usually does, it comes free, and it comes late, and it comes from people you were not watching. I want to close by going back to the old man. Antoninus Pius governed the most powerful empire in the world for 23 years, with no great war, no monumento to himself, no famous speech, no memorable line. He never left Italy. He wore the same clothes, slept in the same place, and kept the same friends. And on the last night, lying down, 74 years old, he had the statue of Fortune carried into his stepson's room without ceremony. And when the officer of the guard came in, the way he had come in every night for 23 years to ask for the watchword, he said one word, Aequanimity, and died. Now I want you to notice what happened afterward, because this is where the video closes. Years later, in a campaign tent on the Danube frontier, in the middle of a filthy war, sick, surrounded by death, his stepson was writing in a notebook that was never meant to be published. Nobody was going to read it. There was no audience. There was nothing to gain. He wrote to himself, the closest thing to an order that exists in the Meditations. In everything, be a disciple of Antoninus. That is the second look. Respicere, to look again. The man was already dead. He had no power over anything anymore. He could no longer reward or punish anybody, and he was still deciding the behavior of the Emperor of Rome every single day from inside a notebook. That is what is left in the room after you walk out. And it is the only kind of respect worth chasing, precisely because it cannot be chased. Antoninus did none of that in order to be remembered. There is not a line anywhere of him trying to build a legacy. He just was the same thing every day for 23 years in the loudest place in the world, and he never once had to raise his voice. The can flies far and makes a scene. The stone stays. A man who has to raise his voice is borrowing the weight he does not have. If something in here landed, write it in the comments, and write it not as a favor to this channel, but as a signal to yourself. I lower the volume and build the weight. What is mine does not need to be announced, and if you are not going to do all 9, do one. Do the 9th. Pick one small uncomfortable thing today that nobody will see, and do it tomorrow morning and tell nobody, including down here. Then, 90 days from now, come back and measure the 2 things: how many marks in a week and how many consultations. You are going to find something curious. The room will take months to notice. You will notice in the 3rd week. Welcome to Shadow and Wisdom. Until the next video, walk through the shadow without fear.